That form will get done today. Hey, we're live.
Yeah, we're live. Welcome, Cellular Healing TV. Sorry about last week if you were on the show. It was a replay. We typically don't do that, but we had an amazing seminar with life-changing doctors. It was a world-changing event, wasn't it, Dr. Pompa and David?
It was absolutely life-changing.
Yeah. So welcome back, Cellular Healing TV, episode 15, I believe. We're running strong with this cellular healing message. Heal the cell, get well, lose weight, feel great. A message that the world needs to hear because life and death happens at the cell. And that's our basis of what we do. But in and around that, we're teaching on topics that destroy lives and giving you the real solutions that can transform your life and give people their lives back. This week's topic, biotoxins. Last week's topic, Lyme disease. Lyme disease is a biotoxin. Well, it produces a living biotoxin. That's what makes us sick. Mold also produces a biotoxin. Heavily detrimental, can transform and kill lives. Dr. Pompa, let's open up this topic and discussion with David today.
Yeah, no, but biotoxic illness is something I see all the time. Matter of fact, I just have a patient with it early this morning. Every time he leaves his house and travels, he feels a little bit better. But ended up in an autoimmune disease. If you recall from our past conversations, it just takes a stressor or stressors, and most often, typically 3, which I call the perfect storm, and it triggers a gene for autoimmune. And sure enough, he was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis. Of course, same protocol, plenty of steroids, eventually chemo drugs. This gentleman chose a different route. And already, after just one intermittent fast, which we started with him, and he is on day 12, and he says, "Doc, already my gut symptoms, are better. My GERD, which is basically his acid reflux, is gone." He says, "My joint pain is literally, at least 80% better. His hands are still stiff. That's it." So, that's it. Now, again, we're moving him into the, from the fast down-regulated inflammation into a detox plan. He's getting his silver amalgam fillings out, and this is the part that I love, is moving out of his house. So he's taking everything of action, removing R1, his source, and we are down-regulating inflammation, and this man will get his life back. So if it were only so easy with everybody, but he was willing to do whatever it took to get his life back as he's moving into retirement, and he realizes the golden years weren't so golden. But yeah, he has mold in his basement. Same thing. If your basement out there is getting wet, folks, that means you have mold. If your humidity is high, if your humidity is over 60 in your basement, in your house, that means you have mold. It's feeding the mold. So you don't even have to have a leak to have mold.
So let's back up on this, Dr. Pump. I know you want me to speak to that, but let's back up and kind of tell our story with our surrounding mold. Dan and I were both sick back in, Dan got sick, probably in the 2000s, in the late 90s.
Yeah, exactly. Probably started in the late 90s for sure, and then, I was actually, of course I had a mouthful of amalgams, but I also was living in an old moldy home that got a basement wet. So 2 stressors, and my third stressor was I was training on my bike at the time. I was putting a lot of miles in. Which is physical stress. So those 3 stressors came together, and my bottom fell out.
And it wasn't until later, I came in on the backside of that and some of the knowledge Dr. Pompa had. He knew about mold illness. We weren't treating it, I would say, or helping people with it as much when we first started our clinic in 2005. And then, I was living in my parents' basement. We knew about it. We knew that it was, a major concern. I moved from a moldy house into my parents' moldy basement, bottom of a hill. If you're at a bottom of a hill, let me just teach you this real quick.
Yeah, because it's worth teaching. Because when you build a home or you look at a home, what Warren's going to show you is positive water pressure. You can't stop water from penetrating in a situation like this. And it's very, very difficult, and the water eventually comes in the basement.
So this is a horrible picture, but we can say this is a hill. You should have built your house up here, but you dig this out right here, and you build your house here. This was the the old hillside you can see going through the house. You make that disappear. Then they dump the dirt down below your house. However, here's what happens. Little rain cloud, water trickles. It's called hydraulic head. I'm a geologist, hydrogeologist. I have a master's degree. This is where it really happens. Rain comes down through the hill. It's hydraulic pressure like a pipe. This is higher. This is lower. It drives moisture up into your basement, and you're done. Some people build it next to a stream. Water level rises up. That's what happens. You get water in your basement. Because if you build at the bottom of the hill, you're fighting nature, and you're fighting humidity. You're going to have mold in your house. Don't build on the side of a hill, and if you do, you're going to have an amazing, what they call, drainage system around your home to take care of that water and move it out and away from your home. So I was living in such a home. That's why I draw this, in my parents' house, and I was living in the basement. So I went from really sick in my previous life in Missoula, Montana, which I loved, that I had to leave, and I wind up moving into a major, what was called amplified mold situation, where it was heavily biotoxic. I went from bad to dysfunctional to laid out, can't move, can't function, can't sleep, and it was because of this biotoxic illness. Fast forwarding a little bit, Dr. Pompa bought a book, just to give kudos to Dr. Why am I thinking Mold Warrior book, Dr. Shoemaker, and we start reading this book and reading the horror stories about mold illness. I think there were true stories. Not much hope in the book. But Dan and I both were like, look, we need to go see this guy, see what he's all about, and see how this all came about, and what if mold illness is truly as bad as he says it is. It actually is. However, it's not a death sentence, but you can't live inside the moldy home. So we learned a lot from Shuey, we like to call him, and a brilliant guy, great researcher, very medical, but definitely alternative in his treatments. And so that's kind of where it started, and from there, we got so hyper about mold and worried about it. Dan moved me out of my moldy basement into his newer home with new carpet, and then that's how we discovered chemical sensitivity. But and so
you guys are the petri dish.
Yeah,
I mean, you think about this. You're the petri dish that we have all these life-changing protocols that are transforming people's lives, and it is, you guys say so often, from pain to purpose.
Yeah, so, I mean, quickly we went, we'll just finish that story. Dan's like, Warren, I'm killing you. I feel so bad. We found out about chemicals more so than we thought. We did all the research on how long does it take for carpet to off-gas, your walls, the insulation, which is full formaldehyde, especially when his home was built. So Dan's like, got to rip out the carpets, save Warren's life. So he did. And we also installed air exchangers to bring fresh air in and pull toxic air out. We did everything we could, and we also did is we put in dehumidifiers to, especially in Pennsylvania, it's a very humid state, not as humid as Atlanta. I probably can't live there because I just got really impacted by a moldy building, a moldy hotel. I'll tell that story in a minute. But
I don't say every house is like that, but
yeah, not your house, but I know you want to feel bad because you want me to move to Atlanta, but it's not going to happen. Too humid for me there. Sorry, I'm moving out west. But you can see that I monitor in my office building. Here's the outside humidity, 57%. Still a little bit too high for inside, but you'll see 39% here. And it even says okay. So even the monitors for humidity know that if this gets high, they say danger, danger, because this mold thing is becoming more and more well known. Sick building syndrome, things like that. It's more common today. Everyone is scared of mold, and you should be. It's massively toxic, and you can't just test for mold spores and mold count. It's not an accurate test. Just so you know, oh, I'm mold free because there's not mold spores. That doesn't mean anything. I'll leave it at that. It's a whole other topic. But I like to keep our humidity in our office below 50, and you should too. 45 to 50 is optimal. Definitely below 50. Above 50, you're going to start growing mold. 60%, you're done. So below 50 in your home, have a monitor, buy a dehumidifier from Costco or Lowe's, Home Depot. Get it done. If you have a bigger basement, you're going to have to go online and buy a major box unit that can move more air. But in this case, in this place, I just run a dehumidifier from Costco.
Can you show them actually what you did? I mean, and here's why we're, explaining this. You know, again, it's our number one in how to fix a cell. You have to remove the source, and moldy homes are a big problem, especially if you live in Georgia, Florida, North Carolina, where I was.
Texas.
You know, these places it's humidity. Just plain humidity is causing mold problems, and so many people are sick because of it. Now, where I live in Park City, you don't have a humidity problem. Of course, you could have a leak, but it's so darn dry that it dries before it leaks. But so it's definitely less of an issue. However, in some of those southern states, it's a big issue. So here's what we do. You know, you want to bring in fresh air. And by the way, we have to do this even with many people who move into new homes because the chemical levels are so high of formaldehyde from all the building materials, the insulation, the walls, the carpets. We exchange it with outside air, which is good for preventing mold, and it's even better for just getting rid of, obviously, toxins in the air. So, Warren, show them. Can you take your computer? Oh, you don't have a little portable laptop, darn.
I won't be able to, man, because it's this camera. No.
I was just saying, if you have your laptop, you can walk over there with it. But I was hoping he would show you just one of these units. I mean, there is a dehumidifier connected to his whole HVAC system in his office. So it brings the air in, and it takes the moisture out. I had that in my home when I lived in Pittsburgh as well. And then he has another unit that pulls outside air in, runs it through the dehumidifier, but it's bringing outside air into his system. See, the problem is, today we're building houses that are sealed.
Right.
And we think that's a good thing. And on the surface, yeah, it saves energy. So on the surface, it is a good thing. However, the problem is we're locking humidity in, and that's the problem. And we seal homes to lock moisture out, but when we wrap homes in plastic, it really is creating a whole new moisture problem. And by the way, you'd say, gosh, you go to Europe, and you'd say, like, how are this? I mean, there must be so much mold. These buildings are, you know, hundreds and hundreds of years old. Well, they didn't build like we built. They build with a different magnesium type of product, believe it or not. It's like a magnesium oxide, and it breathes. So all the old buildings breathed. A building that breathes is a building that doesn't get moldy. There's an air exchange. It's a healthier building. Today, we're building these tight, sealed buildings that they're trapping in chemicals, so we're being poisoned, and we're developing moisture and mold problems. Modern-day building is causing this epidemic.
So that Tyvek wrap that they're putting around houses before they put the brick on, think about this. The brick is porous, and what's it going to do? It's going to have moisture. They're putting nails through the Tyvek, so all of a sudden water is going to come through because it's not a perfect seal, but it's going to get in there, and then it's going to hold it into the house.
Well, the nails, it really doesn't really cause it because the Tyvek's meant to do that, so the nails in it, that's by design. But in the way they overlap it, etc. But it's just, David, it's sealing in a certain amount of humidity. It's sealing in a certain amount of moisture just because the building's meant to breathe, not breathing.
Here's an important point there, guys. If you're building a new home and you're watching this, you're about to build a new home, what happens is, just like I was in Georgia looking at some new condos that are being built, it just rained. And the particle board was, you know, the sides of the home, the exposed 2x4s. It just rained, and they're up there slapping on a plastic bag, Tyvek around one, and that seals that moisture into that home. Then they build the brick around it, do all the fancy stuff, and they think, oh, it looks perfect and beautiful, but they lock this moisture in. Now you have a humid area like Atlanta. They're opening their windows, the humidity. They don't have dehumidifiers in the homes. And you get over 55%, there's mold already growing. There's spores already introduced because there was good and bad mold spores being deposited on that wood. It gets up above that mark, mold starts to grow. It lets off a biotoxin. Maybe it's not amplified yet, but over the years it just builds and grows and builds and grows and feeds and grows, and biotoxic warfare happens between good and bad molds. That's the toxins they use to fight each other. Who's going to win out? Because there's different molds. And the molds that win in homes, because of the temperature, because of the light, it's not the good, healthy molds that get sunshine outside. It's these black molds, like Stachybotrys, and there's some other ones. Dr. Pompa knows them better because he works with patients in tests more than I do. But even though I used to do it for a living, I can't remember because I'm not doing it every day. But these molds win over, and you create this biotoxic warfare going on in your home. those biotoxins, not just the mold spores themselves, but the biotoxins they produce in this war, cause you to become very sick and ill, and it destroys lives. It's one of the main R's of the sources of disease and toxicity that you could possibly ever face. It's one of Dr. Pompa's top 3.
Well, you look at, many people probably know who Erin Brockovich is, the movie, right?
Yeah.
It's where she went and she basically saved all these people who are developing cancer from a plant. I don't recall what industry it was, but they were poisoning the water. The people were getting cancer. She went in. She was the hero. Well, poor Erin Brockovich ended up in a brand new home, just like Warren explained, and same situation. Her home was moldy, and she got very, very sick. So she ended up in her own mold. There was a 48 hours presentation. Warren and I showed it some years ago at the seminar, that whole Erin Brockovich story, and wow, what a story it was. Lawsuits, you name it. Brittany Murphy is another famous person who, she died in a black mold house, literally, and they knew it. Her boyfriend or fiance, I guess, he died 40 days later, something like that. I don't probably have the story exact, but point is that both of them lived in the same home. Both young, healthy people became unhealthy and both died. That's how serious this topic is. So there's a good, I know some of you out there want a resource. I think it's moldremedy.com as far as some good ideas on how to deal with mold. But I want to talk about, I'll make sure that is the right website here in a second, but the getting rid of the mold is a critical thing. So critical that Leviticus 14 in the Bible told the Israelites, his people that he looked after, this is what you do if you see mold. And basically he gave them very strict instructions. If it comes back, then you basically do this. You take all of the contents from the house, take them to a place called unclean, and basically tear down the house. Take all of that and take it to a place called unclean. Yeah, I mean, today it's no different. Most people, I started this show in the context of a story of a gentleman who has to leave his home and move because it is just too much. He'll never fix the amount, and you become hypersensitive to the dog that bit you. And so therefore, for him to even stay in small amounts of that mold, and for years after, if he becomes in contact with that same mold, he will have a very violent reaction. We call it quicker or sicker quicker. So Warren, tell your little story about, you've been out of the mold now for years. You're healthy. You got your life back.
I did.
But you had a sicker quicker situation happen this weekend. Obviously, a little bit of the hair of the dog that bit you.
Yeah, and this will throw us into why you have moldy buildings, especially commercial buildings and hotels. They're flat roofed, and every flat roof building leaks. Every single one. You're fighting Mother Nature. It's flat. They have a slight angle. But water pools on top. The rubber on top of just rubber that's sealed together with a glue at the seams, and they leak. They leak at those seams. And I was in an old hotel, probably 30 years old, flat roof building. Got on the 10th floor, nicest room. One of the nicest rooms in the hotel. And I walked in. I knew it was moldy. I made the assumption that the whole place was moldy, and I forgot what I learned. It wasn't until day 2 when I got sick that I realized I was in an amplified mold situation with a type of mold. Different types of mold affect people differently in the types of biotoxin they produce. But it literally took me out for days. I'm still recovering. Neurologically, I can feel like my left eye kind of drooping, just a little bit brain foggy still, not sleeping as well, not like I used to be. But at the event, because I was on a flat roof building on the top floor, I mean, the mold was literally probably caked above me from multiple leaks over the years. Even if they replaced the roof, they're sealing in water damage in a humid area like Atlanta. The rooms are very humid, and people commented on it. So I stayed in the room, and I didn't listen to my gut instinct when I went in to switch rooms. Dr. Pompa, however, did switch rooms. He was on the 10th floor for a different reason. It was chemically. But he went down to the 9th or 8th floor, I believe, and he did okay. And another doctor who's very sensitive and mold sick, he actually had to leave the hotel. He left the hotel, came back the next day, Warren. He says, I am 90% better after I left. I left the hotel, went to a new hotel. I said I had to get out of there. I left a day early, went to another hotel that I wasn't planning on staying at, had a window that opened, even though I really don't mind causing a little humidity during my stay, but I slept like a baby and was 90% better after I got out of the source. So that this anchors back into Dr. Pompa's story that these people were very, was it Megan, what was the name of the people who died?
Brittany Murphy.
Brittany Murphy. They have all the resources in the world, could get the best doctors, could spend the most money. I mean, they were famous. And no matter what they did, they still died. So if you're living in a moldy home, and when Dr. Pompa has a patient that moves, if he didn't move, he would literally die, especially with the condition and the genetics that were triggered in his life. So it is a life and death situation. You can't live in black mold. It will kill you. It'll kill some people more quickly than others, depending on your genetic susceptibility to mold, because not everyone is as susceptible, of course, to biotoxins. I have the dreaded genotype. I'm very sensitive to mold, and obviously still have mold sensitivities. But now I'm going to have to methylate, do a lot of the things that Dr. Pompa does. I have to detox the biotoxins I took, bind last night for them. I actually reminded my wife when I was laying in bed, because I forgot the last 2 nights, and I'm actually getting sicker. Day 3, Dan, out of the exposure. I'm just not feeling as well, so I made sure last night that I took my bind, and hopefully over the next 7 days, what I'll do is clear that exposure by binding up the biotoxins in my gut through the bile and removing them from my system.
Okay, so I was right on. It's moldremedy.biz. I'm sorry, I was wrong, I wanted to say. B-I-Z. I never heard of such a thing, you computer guys. What the heck is .biz?
Yeah, .biz is common.
Okay.
It's new. It's newer.
All right. Is it common, really? Maybe it's normal but not common. I've never seen it. But anyways, yeah, so you can go there and, look, I guess the reason I'm sending you there is there a chance that somehow you can actually remediate? The answer is yes. You can remediate. Take out all of those things that are affected by the mold, especially leaks, like the leak type of mold that creates it. You can take out all of that. But you can't just do this. Listen, I've made the mistake. Warren's made the mistake. We get all excited, we start jumping into a mold situation, and we uncover more than we banked on, and we're sick for a month. At least back then we were sick for a long time because we actually stirred up the mold. Please don't do that. If you have a leak, you have mold, any type of long-term leak, I should say, slowly. Hire somebody to create. What they do is they come in and they create negative air pressure. We talked about positive water pressure. Well, negative air pressure means that they put up a barrier, and they just basically put a small little fan somewhere pulling the air out of that space they created where they're working, so that air does not share with the inside home air, but it's pulled outside. Yep. It creates a negative pressure, or as far as looking in from the room, it would be a positive pressure going in, negative pressure going out of that controlled space. So, yeah, that's what you have to do to make it, to do a remediation. And then this stuff, here's the other mistake. You don't go and throw Clorox on it, because Clorox is loaded with water, which feeds the roots of the mold, so it kills the mold on the surface, and then underneath it actually makes the problem worse. Hydrogen peroxide is a safer solution, but still really not a solution. So this company does have some really good things. Be careful. These mold people come in, they spray it with very toxic chemicals, and then that creates, typically people who are mold sensitive or are sick from mold, they also, like Warren, have chemical sensitivity on the backside of it. So then they end up with a new story, a new problem. So please, caution, use a safe agent. I know that website talks about that. So there's some education reading for you. But let's talk about real fast. I know we don't have time, guys, but maybe just in a nutshell. This is probably, I know, this is a conversation that we have 5 minutes that we have to redo, because I do want to talk more about what we do to get it out of the body. And I will tell that story, because there really is a whole story around it next time of how we really discovered a lot of that, what we're doing, and kind of share some of that. But there is a technique to pull the mold out of the body. Warren just made quick mention of, hey, I'm a genetic type that doesn't get rid of biotoxins very easy. So you can have 4 people living in the same home. One gets fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue. The other just gets some breathing and wheezing and sinus trouble. Yeah, I mean, genetics play a role just like always. Some people don't get rid of the toxin as easy. So those people will absolutely need typically a treatment even beyond getting out of the home. And that, we'll talk about that next week, but it's pulling the toxin away from the bile complex, the liver, gallbladder. And it works. It really does work. And it's, of course, the cellular healing is needed to go along with that. But we have to remove the person from the source and the source from the person. And I'll leave it at that.
We'll wrap. We opened up Pandora's box on mold. Again, we're straight shooters. We're telling you the truth. And things that we've learned over the years. And Dan and I have had multiple water leaks in our homes, from under the sink to water coming in underneath the flashing underneath the side of his house. I mean, major water damage. I mean, we've been through it all. It's almost hilarious how many bad things happen to. People call it bad luck. We call it training for war, that God allowed these things to happen to us to train us and equip us to educate you. So we've had almost every bad thing that could happen to you in a home has happened to me once, Dan 5 times, because that's usually how it works, 5 to 10 times worse in Dr. Pompa's life. And he laughs because it's frickin' true. I can't help but say that. It's a sad reality, but it's made him a better man and a better teacher and educator, because we both come at it from a place of experience, not because we read it in a book, because we learn it. If you would hire someone, you could go hire somebody to make your home safe. I could do it better. One, because I have an engineering, geology, chemistry, master's degree and background, so I understand the chemistry behind it. Did measurement with $5,000, $10,000 meters in buildings, looking for these sorts of things. Didn't understand it was real. Thought everyone that was complaining about it was nuts. I became that nut guy. So I really stuck my foot in my mouth. But in that process, we learned a lot about creating safe homes. No, you can't hire me. I'm not for hire when it comes to building. I'm not selling my services, but I'm just saying when you live something, they're usually the best teachers and the ones that can get it done. And if you are that person and you have that, get out there, blog, make comments on this YouTube video about how you can help people. Send them to websites.
Yeah, give us surviving. Let me give them some websites. Survivingmold.com, survivingmold.com, chronicneurotoxins.com, chronicneurotoxins.com. There's a simple test you can do, and we'll talk more about testing and more of a solution next week, but a simple visual contrast test that you can do on chronicneurotoxins.com for $15. It's a good place to start, but we'll dig a little deeper next week. And then, Warren, maybe we have a guest on, one of our good friends, Phil Kaplan, to tell a little bit about his story. It would really, teach a lot of lessons, I think, in this lesson. And y'all would be blessed to meet.
I'll set that up, for next week for sure for the show. So I'm going to do that. Actually, I just texted him this morning, and I was thinking about him over and over again about, just some of the mistakes that you could possibly make. Phil's made them all, and I have no idea why he keeps doing them.
What a story. What a story.
Yeah, it's an amazing story, and I really look forward to getting him on. That's a brilliant idea. I'll make that happen. David, any final comments? Dr. Pompa, David, before we wrap up, we have 1 minute left.
Yeah, I know we have to wrap up. It's as you're talking about the subject, I have so many questions, and sometimes I sit here because I'm the person who's watching it saying, ooh, I have this question, I have that question, this happened in my home. So if we're going to...
Please write them down.
Go right below here on Cellular Healing
I
TV.
actually started typing them into my phone as you were talking so I would remember for next week.
Well, below on this page, if you're watching this on cellularhealing.tv, there is a questions button, and that will go to an email which will alert me of any questions you may have, and I can bring them up on any show, in particular if you have them on biotoxic illness, mold illness, sick building syndrome, these different topics. Look them up online, learn about them, and if you don't have your questions answered, we can definitely address them. There's not a question you can give us on mold illness, mold, that we can't answer. So we've been there, done that, and we're here to give you the real truth and real answers on Cellular Healing TV.
Thanks, everyone. Dr. Pompa, I'll see you in a few minutes.
Yeah, exactly. And I can't wait for the next week's call.
Oh, by the way, they're broadcasting live from Las Vegas at a conference. We're learning more about cellular healing, and it's incredible, guys. Thanks so much for taking time today live from Las Vegas.
Yeah, I like that. We should start the show like that. All
Yeah,
right.
live from Las Vegas.
Yeah.
Have a great weekend.
All right. Love y'all. Bye.
Love you. See ya.